Hello, Becky here. Welcome back to my channel. I am here to do a very quick reading update wrap up of the first 3 months of the year, so starting January 1st to the end of March. I don't do a lot of wrap ups or TBRs or anything like that. I tend to be more of a mood reader and I never stick to a TBR. I did a TBR for January. My kids did Pictionary and then picked books for me to read, and I've read like 2 of them out of like the 5 that we picked. And then wrap-ups, I'm like, what's the point of doing a wrap-up if you're just going to watch my other videos of like blogs and other things where I've read these books? But I know like I want to grow my channel, I want more people to be engaged with my content and stuff like that, and a lot of people do wrap-ups. So I think instead of doing TBRs, because I never know exactly what I'm reading, unless I have a very specific, like a readathon that I'm doing, I won't really be doing TBRs as much, but I will be doing wrap-ups at least, maybe not every month, but every couple months, like now. My friend bought me this cute little journal, the Book Lover's Journal, my personal reading record. So the first part of the book is you're recording like all your stuff that you've read, and then the back of the book has like lists and other things like that. So anyways, I've been very bad at keeping it up, but I have been keeping track of my reading on the story graph. So I've been going back through there and putting it into here when I have a chance. I'm going to go through this very quickly. So the very first book I read this year, it was Legendborn by Tracy Dion. I picked up this book as an ebook through my library on my Kobo, and it was for the Avengers Readathon, which is going all year long, along with a rewatch of the movies through Thor Wants Another Letter. So if you're interested in that, definitely check it out. She's pretty active on Instagram with it. I've only read one book that was part of like the book club, but I'm really glad. I really like Legendborn. It is a story about Arthurian King Arthur and the Knights of the Round Table, stuff like that. So it was a little bit confusing. I gave it a 4 out of 5 stars because I was a little bit confused with the different like classes and stuff like that. And I was reading it as an ebook, so I couldn't like flip back and forth and be like, okay, what is a page? What is this? What is that? So that's kind of like on me as well. But also our main character is Bree experiences the loss of her mother like really early. It's the beginning of the book. She's 16 years old and she has applied to this like early entry to this college, and her and her mom got in a fight about it. But after the death of her mother, she still decides to go. She's only 16, going to college with like 18 plus year olds. And I felt like some of the situations she was put in were very just a little too mature, like the relationships she was put in. Some of the stuff she encounters while she's there is stuff that nobody encounters. This is like a fantasy novel, so fighting like hell demons and stuff like that is obviously like no 16-year-old should be doing that, but then again, no like 30 or 40-year-old or 25-year-old should be fighting those things either. That aside, some of the like the relationship was just a little bit mature, and I know at that age we feel so mature and that we can be in those kind of relationships, but it was a little bit, I don't know, I was like, maybe it's because I'm in my 30s and I'm a mom now and stuff. I'm like, you're too young to be in that kind of relationship. Anyways, I really liked it though. Bree goes to college. She discovers that there is fantastical elements going on at the college. There's a secret Arthurian secret society at the college that she kind of wiggles her way into. Bree is a black character. All the characters in the society are white, of course. So there's a little bit of a mixed race relationship there. There's a little bit of tension because she's a black woman who has like no background of this whatsoever. This is going back all the way to Arthur and the Knights of the Round Table, and of course she's got no tie to that whatsoever. She's grieving the loss of her mother. She meets a counselor there who is also black and who knew her mother, who went to that college as well, and she's learning some interesting things about her background. There's just a lot going on in it, and I really liked it. I'm not a big fantasy reader, so I liked that this was grounded in the real world, but there was fantasy in it. Gates being opened and demons coming in and things like that. And then I picked up Arizona Dreams, a Dave Mapstone mystery by John Telton, and this is by the Poison Pen Press. The Poison Pen is a local bookstore in Arizona, in Scottsdale, and I went there in February of 2020 before the world imploded, and I traveled to Arizona for the very first time, and a friend of mine told me that the author of the Outlander series, that's like her local bookstore, and you can get like signed copies of her stuff, and sometimes she's there and stuff like that. So I was like, oh, if we go to Scottsdale, I need to go to this bookstore. And then I asked them like, what are some local authors, stuff like that. So I picked up this book. I picked up another one, but this is the only one I've read so far. And I read it for, the word dreams was in it, so it was a perfect opportunity to pick it up for Books and Lala's, Kayla's Buzzworth-a-thon going throughout the year. And January was Dreams. So this book was okay. It was like maybe a 3 out of 5. It was very just okay. I don't know. The mystery wasn't that great, I guess. The timeline was really weird. Like, I feel like when I read these like detective mystery books like Michael Connelly and stuff, I'm like, man, all this stuff happens like bang, 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 bang. But in this book, it was probably more realistic. But I'm like, okay, how long has it been? And it's like 3 months later. I'm like, what? What's going on? It's kind of confusing, kind of slow, kind of like all over the place. Not really my thing. And then I read The Midnight Library by Haig. That is a book that I picked up because of the 3 Bonds and a Book club. That is now the Homebody Book Club. This was also in January, and I just did a video of speaking on that. That is about a woman named Nora Seed who is not happy with her life and chooses to end it. And upon taking these pills and going to sleep, she ends up in this midnight library where she gets to see all her life choices that she never took. If she had taken them, what road that would have led down.
You learn more in the other video.
I also picked up Truly Madly Guiltily by Leanne Moriarty. And I read that for Kids Pick My TBR that I did for January. And Maya picked this book, Truly Madly Guiltily. I picked this up at like a thrift, I think, Value Village probably. So it's a little bit beat up, not counting me just throwing it on the floor. So my middle daughter Maya picked this book because of the splash of water on the cover for the picture of a penguin. So, and it kind of does, like if you think of like a penguin like splashing in, it kind of looks like that. So the Pictionary was you draw a penguin. So yeah, that was cute. I like Leanne Moriarty. I think this is my second one I've read from her. I believe I also read The Big Little Lies. 6 responsible adults, 3 cute kids, 1 small dog. It's just a normal weekend. What could possibly go wrong? This one was good. I liked it. In Truly Madly Guiltily, Leanne Moriarty takes on the foundations of our lives: marriage, sex, parenthood, and friendship. She shows how guilt can expose the fault lines in the most seemingly strong relationships, how what we don't say can be more powerful than what we do, and how too often we don't appreciate how extraordinary our ordinary lives are until it's too late. I haven't been giving star ratings this year, really, unless it's like a very obvious 5 out of 5. I haven't really been doing star ratings. I wouldn't say this is a 5 out of 5, but it's good. It's a good, like, mystery suspense is what I marked down on that one. Also in January, I read Split Tooth by Tanya Tagak. I learned about this book through Kayla on Books and Lala, and my mom bought it for me as a gift from Iron Dog Books in Vancouver. Check them out. I believe they're Indigenous owned. Pictionary, again, picks my TBR. Maya picked this one for the fox head on the front that looked like a marshmallow. So, can't argue that. This book was interesting. Kayla from Books and Lala talks about like how amazing this book is and how powerful it is. And if you listen to her, Tanya Tagak, read it. I haven't listened to the audio of it, but I think it's available in my library, so I might listen to it later. It's told in a really interesting way. It's not usually a book I really connect with the story of it. It's a little bit fantastical in some parts. Some parts you're like, is this real? Is she imagining this? What's going on? I don't even know how to explain this book to you to try and tell you to go pick it up, or like what kind of person would like this. So Tanya is a Canadian Inuit throat singer. So if you're looking for more Indigenous reads, this book here. And again, Iron Dog Books in Vancouver, they'll ship to you. Now you're supporting Indigenous bookstore as well. I'll just read you the back of this book, the plot, what it is. A fierce, tender, heartbreaking story unlike anything you've ever read. A girl grows up in Nunavut in the 1970s. She knows joy and friendship and the love of her parents. She knows the tedium of the everyday world and the raw, immoral power of the ice and sky and seductive energy of the animal world. She knows the ravages of alcohol and violence at the hands of those she should be able to trust. She sees the spirits that surround her and the immense power that dwarfs all of us. When she becomes pregnant, she must navigate all this. Haunting, brooding, exhilarating, and tender all at once. Split Tooth moves effortlessly between fiction and memoir, myth and reality, poetry and prose. Tagak conjures a world and a heroine readers will never forget. So I think that one line there, fiction and memoir, myth and reality, poetry and prose. Right there is like where I get confused. I'm like, what's going on? What's happening? It's not what I typically read, but it does make it a little bit of an easier read because some of it is like poetry. There's more like chapters where it's all like paragraphs, like written like a regular chapter, and then again there's a few poems in there. There's some pictures. So it is a little bit of an easier, like it could be a faster read, but you might also want to slow down and really absorb what she's trying to say in it as well. I haven't listened to the audiobook, but I hear it's good. So, and I read, it took me a long time. It's 15 hours and 15 minutes long, and I read it between January 26th and March 30th. But I listened to Jane Austen's Emma. I've listened to this before. I watched one of the movies with Gwyneth Paltrow in it. I've seen that one before, but I rented them from the library because I listened to Little Women again at the end of 2019 and then saw the most recent film like New Year's Eve 2019, and then I decided I would listen to Emma, so because I saw that a new movie was coming out. So I listened to Emma and then I watched the latest movie and then the Gwyneth Paltrow one. Noteworthy experiences while reading this book. Long. So this book took me a long time, like between January and the end of March, because I was just listening to it between listening to other things. It's Jane Austen. It's a romance. Emma plays matchmaker basically, and she should kind of mind her own business. And then I read The Borrowers Afloat. Got it from Value Village. I read The Borrowers last year. Really liked it. Really cute. Really fun story. So I got The Borrowers Afloat. Again, same thing. Like, it's just a continuation of The Borrowers. I think this might be like the third book though. I think I'm missing one between the first Borrowers and this one. But it's really fun. I would really highly suggest reading it with your children. I'm not sure what age. Like, my daughter's 9 and 7. I don't know if my 5-year-old would sit through it, but 6, 7 years old. I've been looking for this bookmark everywhere. So, Eric at Break Even Books. Check him out. Found his bookmark, finally. But yeah, it's just fun. I just really, really like it. Good children's book. I'd say, you know your children, but definitely like 7 and up would probably enjoy it. And then obviously there's the movies, and what's the Arrietty one, Soph? What's that called?
The Secret World of Arrietty.
The Secret World of Arrietty is also based off of that one by the Studio Ghibli, which is really fun. So in February, I wanted to read a little bit more romance because it's the month of love, right? So I finally picked up the Bromance Book Club books, the 3 books by Lisa K. Adams. I believe there's a 4th one. I'm not sure if it's out or not. I really enjoyed the first one, just the Bromance Book Club, because it talked about saving a marriage. So I thought that was a really good one. I did a whole vlog talking about the Bromance Book Club, so definitely check that out and my thoughts on that. But I really like the first one because it just talks about saving a marriage, and I think that is so important and not talked about enough. Nowadays, it's all about like new love, but never about like saving your marriage. So I really, really appreciated that book. And then I also listened to Rafe by
subscribe.
Rebecca Weatherspoon. It's pretty short. It's 6.5 hours long. And I read it because of the Currently Reading Book Club with Ali Dunn. That was the book that she suggested. It is smutty. And as a Christian woman trying to stay away from that stuff, I don't think I can read more of these books. I wrote sweet romance, cute twin girls, lots of smut. And it's like right out there. He's just like, I'm looking at her, and it's his like first time meeting her, and he's like, I'm so hard, I just want to like push her onto the counter and do this and that. Well, and it's like very descriptive and very detailed, and like I'm also listening to it. It was sweet and it was cute, and he is, I just wrote down Rafe, but it's the buff male nanny, so there you go. She's divorced. She comes home and her twin girls are just sitting on the couch watching TV, and she's like, where's the nanny? And they're like, oh, she left. So she's like, well, crap. And she's like a heart surgeon. So strong, powerful, independent female character. Needs somebody to watch her kids. You got the sweet buff male nanny, but he's like really sweet and good with kids, but also like manly, right? Like muscular. You wouldn't think like, oh, he's wimpy or something like that. Like, so it was good that way. Like the characters I thought were really good. Some diversity in there. I believe he's white and he's with his dad, and his stepmom is black, and then but him and his dad are white, and then I think he's got sisters that are mixed, half sisters because of the stepmom. The mom looking for a nanny, I think she's black or at least mixed, and then her kids, and then it's like him and her getting together. It was good. If you like that kind of story, I definitely suggest it. Very smutty, obviously. Then I read The Undercover Romance. I wrote, I love how Lisa has two flawed characters in her stories and they are confronted with their issues and their pasts and need to work through those things. Each person is responsible for their own stuff, but they have each other in the end. So it's not like me and my husband and we get in a fight and I just blame him for all his problems, but take no responsibility for what the problems I bring into the relationship. So I really like Lisa focuses on the fact that it takes two people and we're all messed up and we all have issues that we need to work through. So I really, really appreciated that in the bromance book clubs. That one was Undercover Romance. I was listening to Get a Life, Chloe Brown. Everyone loves it so much. I've heard about it through BookTube. I got it on the Libby app, but I ended up DNFing it because after reading Rafe and just smut, like I said, I'm like, I can't do this anymore. And this one, it was just, there was a lot of sex in it as well, or just like thinking about it, or like masturbation and stuff like that. And I was like, I just don't want this in my head right now. People talk about the diversity in these books and the representation in these books and stuff like that, and I appreciate that. And I think that's really good, and I may come back to these later, and it's easy enough to like read over those parts, like skip over them, or like I was listening to it as an audio. It's not like I can't get through those parts, but I just, at that moment in my life, I just DNF'd it. I wrote, I can see why people like these books. I liked what I listened to. I enjoyed the characters and the chronic illness representation, but there was just too much sex in it for me, especially after listening to Rafe. I want to filter out more of the smutty books from now on. That's just my personal opinion and just my convictions and my faith. Then I picked up The One as a romance book by John Mars. Again, I heard about this from BookTube. Everyone talks about how awesome it is. This one is a romantic sci-fi. So The One, if you don't know, is this person developed this app and this test. So you get like a blood test done and then they mark your DNA and find your very perfect match through your DNA. So we're following several couples here. Oh, it's not blood, it's just a quick mouth swab because it's DNA. A simple DNA test is all it takes. Just a quick mouth swab and soon you'll be matched with your perfect partner, the one you're genetically made for. So we're following several different people in this, and some of them are like already together and they're like, well, should we take the test and see if we're matched? And because they haven't been matched, and then we're meeting people who are like on a dating website and want to be matched, and one person is a serial killer and gets matched with somebody very interesting. It was a good book. It wasn't as great as I was hoping it would be, but I enjoyed it. And he's got a few other books that people are raving about. I think The Passengers is one of them. So I definitely want to check it out because I didn't dislike this book. There was definitely some interesting like conversations brought up in this book. So I would suggest it. This was a book that I thrifted as well. So always good to save money on these books. And then I read But Genesis Begins Again by Alicia D. Williams. I marked it as YA, but it's middle grade. And beautiful and heartbreaking. Would I recommend this book? Yes, I would recommend it to everybody. This book made me cry. I was not expecting to cry through a middle grade book about someone's experience that I've never experienced or never will experience. It says it's reminiscent of Toni Morrison's The Bluest Eye, but appropriate for a much younger audience. I have not read any Toni Morrison, and I obviously haven't read The Bluest Eye, so I want to get my hands on that and read that as well. I'll just read the back to tell you what it is about. There are 96 reasons why 13-year-old Genesis dislikes herself. She knows the exact number because she keeps a list. Because her family is always being put out of their house. Because her dad has a gambling problem. Because Genesis knows this is all her fault. Because she is too black. Genesis is determined to fix her family, and she's willing to try anything to do so. But when she starts to find a thing or two she actually likes about herself, she discovers that changing her own attitude is the first step in helping change others. This book was so heartbreaking, and I just wanted to grab Genesis and hug her and tell her, you are beautiful. You're beautiful. Don't try and change. Don't go through the drastic things she goes through to change like her skin color. Don't do that. You're so beautiful. Her dad has a gambling problem. They're always being put out of their home. She has to move schools a lot. Her family life is not great. Her mom's mom hates her father. So there's that whole issue. And sometimes she has to stay with her grandma because they're put out of the house and they have nowhere to go. And her dad is like gambling and drinking and stuff like that. But it's just so heartbreaking. And I definitely recommend it for everybody, regardless of your skin color. Even there's probably like a like a boy version of this maybe, but I don't know of it. And the author is a teacher as well. I think she is like a middle grade teacher, so she really hits home with this one. And highly, 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 highly recommend this one. 5 out of 5, definitely. I read that one in February, and then I listened to the X Talk by Rachel Lynn Solomon. That was a list my friend sent me, and she's like, here, let's pick a couple books, and we decided to read that one. I really enjoyed this one. It's like 11 hours to listen to. I've listened to a few other people talking that really like romance and stuff, and they've listened to this book, and they really loved it. There's a Chihuahua named Steve in it, and I'm just a sucker for a dog in a book, especially a Chihuahua, because I grew up with a Chihuahua, and he's like a rescue dog as well, so he has a few little issues, but they're just like kind of like neurotic Chihuahua issues anyways. I really, really liked it. I liked the characters. There was a lot of dialogue, like getting to know each other, the two. This is like a fake dating trope, but it's kind of mixed up a little bit if you don't know the story. I always forget to give you the plot. There's these two people working in the radio station. One has been working there for a while. One is new. The guy is new. And they're trying to like come up with something for on air because like this other show's being taken off, blah, blah, blah. Anyways, it's called the X Talk because they're like, well, let's get X's in to talk about what went wrong in their relationship, and they can give like relationship advice to help other people, but they don't have a couple to talk to, so they're like, hey, you two, pretend that you were dating and now you're broken up. And so they have to get to know each other enough to say that they dated for like 3 months and now they're broken up and why they broke up and all this stuff. And then of course they fall for each other. So it's like fake relationship, fake broken up. Now they're in a relationship, stuff like that. But I just really liked that they get sent away for a weekend to get to know each other better so that their chemistry comes off on the radio and that people feel like, okay, they actually were a couple and they do know each other. So they get sent off on this like romantic weekend, get to know each other kind of thing. And a lot of like what they learned from the background was through a conversation, and I really enjoyed that, especially as an audiobook. It just worked really well. Definitely recommend that one if you like romance. Then I read the Crazy Stupid Romance, and it made me cry, and I didn't make any notes on it, but I think it was just because the two characters in Crazy Stupid Romance were just coming to terms with things within themselves. Like I said, Lisa K. Adams writes flawed characters that come to recognize their flaws and see what they need to fix within themselves and work on themselves before they can have a good and healthy relationship. I started February 22nd, and I've nowhere near finished reading White Fragility. Why it's so hard for white people to talk about racism. I am halfway through the book, on page like 74, 75. I should actually like finish the chapter, or at least the paragraph apparently. It's a hard book to read. There's a lot in it to like absorb and take in. So I've been just kind of reading it between other books and stuff like that. And I keep putting it down, and then, like a couple weeks pass, and I'm like, oh yeah, I gotta read that. And then I get busy reading other things and stuff. It's not because it's not a great book. It's just a lot. And I'm getting a lot from this. I ran out of space like halfway through my video. But as I was talking about White Fragility, read and comprehend and break down a little bit. It's also written by a white person speaking about race and stuff. Robin DiAngelo, her job is to help like racism in the workplace and stuff like that and bring awareness to it and what you can do. And she works with other black people. I don't know about like other races and stuff, but she mentions like having black people in the room with her when she's doing these talks and stuff that work with her. But this is really, really good, and I'm really enjoying this. So White Fragility, definitely recommend it. Time Traveler's Wife, I've heard about this for a long time. I thrifted this. I also heard about it on the Books Unbound podcast. Oh, buzzword for March was time. So this is why I read the Time Traveler's Wife. I enjoyed this. It was a little bit weird. I wasn't sure if I would like it. I wasn't sure because it's not chronological. It's kind of like all over the place. This guy, Henry, when Henry meets Claire, he is 28 and she is 20. Henry has never met Claire before. Claire has known Henry since she was 6. Impossible but true, because Henry finds himself periodically displaced in time, pulled to moments of emotional gravity from his life, past and future. Henry and Claire's attempts to live normal lives are threatened by a force they can neither prevent nor control, making their passionate love story intensely moving and entirely unforgettable. The Time Traveler's Wife is a story of fate, hope, and belief, and more than that, it is about the power of love to endure beyond the bounds of time. So Henry is a time traveler, but he cannot control when or where he travels to. It could be it's mostly the past, could be into the future. he never knows when he's going or how long he's going to be there. It was interesting. Definitely. I enjoyed it. It's not my new favorite book, but I liked it. Definitely check it out. I listened to The Hate You Give by Angie Thomas, which is 12 hours. And I listened to that in March as well. Sophie, you have school.
Oh, yeah.
So good. My first ever Angie Thomas I have on the come up to read as a physical book. Haven't read it yet. Decided to listen to this one because on that list of books that my friend gave me for us to like go through was Concrete Rose, which is the story of Star is the main character in The Hate You Give. Her dad's Maverick. His story is Concrete Rose. So instead of listening to that one first, I decided to listen to The Hate You Give. Loved it. Listened to Concrete Rose. Amazing. Maverick, come! Maverick, come! So I was listening to Concrete Rose, and as I was finishing that book, we picked up our very first foster puppy, and they said we could name him, and his name is Maverick. So you can guess where I got that from. Say hi to the people. Say, hey, I'm Mavi. Just licked me in the mouth. Say, hi, I'm Mavi, and I'm the most adorable puppy ever. If you don't know, The Hate You Give is about Star. She is, I believe, 16 years old, and she witnesses one of her friends being shot by the cops. It is like they just pull him over for whatever reason. They said he failed to signal, and they pulled him over. They were coming from a party, whatever. He picks up a hairbrush, gets shot by the cops, and killed. And that's the story. Concrete Rose is the story of her dad having a baby at 17 years old. And I really, really liked it because it showed a man, well, a boy, a 17-year-old, man, boy, becoming a father and sticking around and raising his children and being confused and lost about, like, I don't know how to change diapers. This kid's keeping me up all night. I need to go to school. I need to work. I need to provide for my child. I need to provide. I'm living with my mom and she's working 2 jobs trying to pay bills. And now I have a baby on top of that. And the mom kind of just ditches out. She's having a hard time. She's going through like postpartum. She just drops this kid on him and is like, see you later. You hear the story so much of teenage girls becoming moms and needing to be there. And sometimes the dad stays, sometimes he doesn't. More often than not, he doesn't. And so she's just on her own. And so it was really, really cool to hear a story of a father becoming a father at 17 years old and having a kid or 2 and being there for them and sticking it out as a single father too. Not just there in support of the mom, but as a single father, taking on the majority role of raising that child. So The Hate You Give is also available as a movie on Amazon Prime. So me and my husband are watching that, but we've only made it halfway through because it's a hard story. I mean, it's dealing with death of a friend at the hands of the cops, a black youth at the hand of a white male cop. And it's a hard story, it's a long story, and me and my husband are exhausted parents who don't have the mental energy to watch a movie like that at the end of the day. We've been watching Arrested Development again instead. But anyways, The Hate You Give, awesome. And now I'm excited to read On the Come Up because I like those 2 by Angie Thomas. And yes, I know, I'm late to being there. Me and my husband also listened to Astrophysics for People in a Hurry by Neil deGrasse Tyson and narrated by Neil deGrasse Tyson. It's only 5 hours long. It says, how do I discovered or required this book? I'm scrolling through audiobooks to listen to with Sebastian. So that took us because my husband works 7 days on, 7 off, and we don't get a lot of like dedicated listening time. It took us from January 14th to February 24th to listen to a 5-hour audiobook, but it was good. If you like, it's very much astrophysics, and it's not astrophysics for dummies, it's astrophysics for people in a hurry. So it's not so complex that you can't understand it, but I'm not a scientific person. So some of it did go over my head, but it was still very accessible. If you're interested in astrophysics, if you like Neil deGrasse Tyson, definitely worth picking up. And it's cool because he narrated it himself. And me and my husband picked up February 24th, Ready Player 2. I've heard that it's just basically a waste of time kind of thing because it's basically just Ready Player 1 all over again, which we listened to, I think, in 2019 maybe. Loved it. Ready Player 2, I want to listen to again because I can get it for free from my library. And it is also narrated by Will Wheaton, who narrated the first one, and he's just a great narrator. and I don't think I could listen to it as anybody else's voice. Yeah, it might be like a waste of time, but it's something me and my husband can listen to together. It just became available again, but me and my husband are going on a trip, and next week, 5 hours away, so 5 hours there, 5 hours back. We will not listen to an audiobook for the entirety of 5 hours of our drive. That's too much for us, but we will have some listening time in. So I just set my book to be delivered on the day that we leave. Excited about that. I listened to Brown Girl Dreaming by Jacqueline Woodson. It is a memoir, and it is told in poetry and verse. I didn't write down how many hours it was, but it's like 4 hours or less. I found this book through BookTube, people talking about it. I think Ashley from, what's her channel called? I'm totally blanking on her channel name. Anyways, I listened to it. It says when and where read, mostly in the van while Sebastian was shopping, because like I said, it's a really short book. And I read this one, I think, for another like readathon that I was doing, but I didn't write it down for some reason. Anyways, it was really good. I really enjoyed it. It's memoir. It's really easy to listen to, short and told in memoir told in poetry and verse. And it was just a really good story of this girl and how she traveled, I think, from like, she was in the southern states, and I think her parents divorced, and she was living with her grandparents, but her mom moved to New York to like get a better life, and then like came back and picked them up at one point, her and her brother, and then moved them back to New York. Just growing up in the States. I'm not sure what years. I think it was like 60s, 70s time. And then I also finished in March, Kiss Cut, it's a Grant County #2 in the series by Karen Slaughter. This one had to do with not pedophilia, but like, yes, but more child pornography. And so definitely look up trigger warnings for this, and like getting girls and boys and putting them into these like situations and taking pictures of them and stuff like that. That's what it had to deal with. It starts with a girl trying to shoot, like a teenage girl trying to shoot like her boyfriend, and then the cop has to shoot her, and it goes from there, and then they learn about all this stuff. So definitely look up trigger warnings for that book. I read You Have a Match. I did my Reading Pink Books vlog. Check that out. I talk about that there. I read that in March. That was a YA book, and it is a couple of teenagers decided to do their DNA matches because her one friend is adopted, so he wanted to see like, there's a place when you go do like the DNA test, you can mark like, tell me of other relatives who have done this, and he did it, and so he's like, do it with me, and she doesn't, discovers that she has a sister she didn't know about. So check that one out. That is a YA and a really easy read, and I enjoyed that one. Amal Unbound by Asha Saeed. Middle grade contemporary. Read that for the Homebody Book Club. Listened to it as an audiobook. I really enjoyed it. Really good. She is living in Afghanistan. Something happens, and this girl, she gets on the wrong side of this guy. Basically, of this guy's temper. He's kind of like controls the town. And she has to go and be like a servant in his home. And her mom is going through like depression and stuff like that, like just had a baby, and is going through, again, postpartum depression and stuff like that. And then she's like a servant in this home trying to like work off this debt and all this stuff. So it's not a very long one. It is a shorter book, and it kind of does just end and wrap up, and it's a happy ending, just so you know going into it. It is a middle grade, so I think it's good for middle grade students to get like a different perspective, not just an Afghan person in America, but an Afghan person like living in Afghan. And then I read People Like Her by Ellery Lloyd, which was a thriller, again, that I did the Reading Pink Books vlog. So you can check that out. She is an Insta-mom and is followed by millions, but watched by one. And then I also read Finlay Donovan is Killing It by Elle Talkimando, a mystery, again, part of the Pink Books that I read. This one was a really fun, it was a mystery, but it was also fun and funny, and I laughed and I enjoyed it. And that's it for March. January, February, and March. My dog is chewing on my cat scratching post. So yeah, this was a little bit longer than I was anticipating. Maybe I need to do these once a month, and I see why people don't do, like I know Books and Lala and a few other people do like quarterly stats and stuff like that, but I can see why people do this monthly instead of every 3 months, and my throat is bugging me, and I'm done, so I gotta wrap this up. But Thank you for watching. Let me know if you read any of these books, if you liked these books, if didn't like these books, what you've been reading, and I'll talk to you next time. Make sure to like, comment, subscribe, and all that good stuff. Bye!
Bye.